Hey, welcome into the program, everybody. This is Breaking the Huddle. I'm Joel Klatt, ready to celebrate college football with you. And this show, as always, brought to you by Dr. Pepper. It is the official drink of Fansville. We got a lot to get into. My top 10, of course. Some thoughts on college football, which I'm excited to give you. We're going to have a little mailbag. So ask Klatt. Get your questions in on social media. We'll get to those during the course of the program. I'm going to break down Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, what makes them special and different, and how Alabama and Clemson utilize their star backs. Then, of course, some clapback at the end of the show. But as we do each and every week, let's get into my top 10 teams in the country after a wild weekend in college football. And it was a wild one there in the old Cotton Bowl, as Gus and I called Red River, the 4-overtime thriller between Oklahoma and Texas. Congratulations to Oklahoma on a huge win, and Spencer Rattler in particular for playing well late. Neither of those teams are in the top 10, though. And here who is, for me, Oklahoma State, Florida A&M. Congratulations, you're jumping in. North Carolina, look at you at number 7. Penn State and Ohio State are going to stay in the top 10 for me because I believe that they're really good teams. And Notre Dame, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson are the top 5. Now, folks, when I get home every single Saturday night, I immediately pour over college football, watch highlights, read articles, do a lot of different things to try to keep myself updated on the sport as a whole. And then I try to put out, as you know, a top 10 every Saturday night on social media. I throw it out there on Twitter. Now, obviously, it's fun, and I get a lot of great feedbacks. And, of course, I get everybody's snark, which is something that I love. But it was very interesting this week as I was doing my top 10. I was a bit frustrated with college football in general. And the reason is that the top 5 were really easy to locate. And then behind that, I started thinking to myself, like, oh, well, this team's no good and that team's no good. Should they really be in the top 10? Oh, I don't know. It was really difficult after the top 5. And I was frustrated with myself that I was minimizing these teams outside of the top 5 in the country. And I was looking for reasons why they were not good rather than reasons why they were playing well. And it got me really thinking more about the college football playoff. Folks, you can make a strong argument that the college football playoff has weakened our ability to be great fans of the sport in general. Think about it, right? I mean, you've got Ohio State, Clemson. You've got Alabama and Oklahoma, who have accounted for 17 college football playoff appearances. 17. The rest of the country combined has appeared in the playoff 7 times. That's unreal dominance at the top of college football. But that dominance, I don't know if it's good for the sport. Is the college football playoff hurting college football? I think that it is. But let's try to avoid it. Let me walk through how we can try to avoid it. First and foremost, you got to understand how it's maybe hurting the sport. Number one, I think when you look at the college football playoff, you can argue that it has further divided the haves and the have-nots, right? Because 5-star recruits and top-end 4-star recruits look at the teams that are going to the playoff, and that's where they want to go play. Then guess what happens? Those teams go back to the playoff. And then top 4-star and 5-star players, where do they want to go? To those places. And so it's a perpetuating cycle that those teams get the same recruits, and then they continue to play dominant football. And we're going to see that time and time and time again. So it's going to be very hard to change this and increase the level of parity throughout the sport. Number two, you can argue that it's made commentary really lazy. And sometimes I fall into this, and shame on me for it. But my industry immediately makes things black and white. This conference is trash. This team is trash. This team is great. And we go hyperbolic in order to get you to click on what we're doing. Try to avoid that. Number three, I think it minimizes the excellence at the top. What Alabama and Clemson are doing is historically good. We've never seen a run of success like Alabama is having under Nick Saban. Never. They've been number 1 in the country at some point in every season for 12 seasons. That's astounding, and I think that we should evaluate it as such. And then lastly, I think it turns a blind eye to some of the quality accomplishments that are going on outside of the college football playoff. Let me give you a couple of examples. Okay, what Miami is trying to do and trying to build under Manny Diaz is pretty tough to do. And you might think to yourself, like, well, they've got a great history. Yes, but in modern vintage, Miami's only won 10 games or more one time since joining the ACC. You might think to yourself, really? Yes. Yes, all of those great 10-win teams and the Miami of old were either independents or they were in the Big East. Ever since joining the ACC, they've only had one double-digit win season. So what they're trying to build right now is very difficult to do. So while they're getting better, let's caution ourselves about evaluating them just against Clemson right now, because what Clemson is doing is historically good across the history of college football. Notre Dame is another great example. They are on a run of success right now that rivals any other run of success throughout their program's history. You might bristle at that if you're an Irish fan, and I understand, right? They haven't won the national championship, and that's certainly something that you would strive for at Notre Dame as being one of the blue bloods of the sport. But did you know that if Notre Dame could win 10 games this year, which might be difficult with the pandemic, but if they won double-digit games this season, it would be the fourth straight season that they won 10 or more games. Now, you might think to yourself, that's really good, but we've seen Alabama do it. We've seen Ohio State do it, Texas under Mac Brown. Like, teams do this all the time. Not at Notre Dame. Not at Notre Dame. They've never in their history won 10 or more games in 4 consecutive seasons. So what Brian Kelly is doing currently at Notre Dame should be valued because it's really good. And I would argue it's way better than what they were before Brian Kelly got there. They're playing at the top end of college football, even if that top end is not quite at the Alabama, Clemson college football playoff standard. So there's 3 things that we need to do as fans, I think, all of us collectively, to become better fans and to enjoy the sport and celebrate the sport more. Okay, here's the 3 things. 1, know your program. Folks, you can never get to a destination unless you know who you are. All right. So you got to know your program, know its history. When were they at their best? And what are they at their average? What's your natural recruiting base? What should the expectations be around recruiting? All of these things are very, very important in order to do number 2. So if number 1 is know your program, then the second thing you need to do is set realistic expectations year in and year out. All right. And now those are going to change based on what's happening in number 1. But I really believe that if you define your program accurately in number 1, then you can reach a set of realistic expectations in number 2. All of us should strive to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Listen, I'd love to beat Usain Bolt in a sprint, right? I'd love to win a gold medal and be the fastest man on the face of the planet. Ain't in the cards for me. Just ain't, right? So that should not be my goal, but that doesn't mean I can't be excellent at something else. All right. And it doesn't always mean that I can reach the specific goal that I want to reach. It does mean that I can be great at something else. When we try to be something that we're not, I think that there are problems, and those problems have been, I think, very easy to see throughout college football. I would say that Nebraska lost its way for a while, and they're still trying to find their way back. All right. So number 1 is know your program. Number 2 is define realistic success. And then number 3, and I think this is really the most important, is don't overreact as a fan. All right. It's not always black and white. And as is the case in most area of our lives right now, our attention is sought. All right. Our attention is sought after by hyperbole and clickbait. Don't fall for it. All right. Don't fall for it, because right now the playoff standard is not the only standard that you can match your program against. I think it robs people of their college football joy. Don't let it rob you of your college football joy. Now, should that be the standard? Should that be the goal? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. But know where you are on that route towards that destination and understand it realistically. All right, because this sport is way too good for all of us to fall trap to the hyperbole and black and white analysis that goes on in the clickbait world. We are better than that, and you are better than that. So let's celebrate college football accordingly. A little mailbag time. Ask Klatt. I'm getting to your questions right now. So let's get right to it because time is of the essence. This one comes in from Connor. Do you consider the high scores in the SEC this weekend a result of limited contact in an already shortened preseason, or do you think there has been a significant drop in the quality of SEC defense in recent years? Partly yes to number 1, and none of the end of that question. See, I don't think it's been a drop off in defense as much as it is an increase in the efficiency of offense. All right. Right now, the spread offense is the preferred offense across college football. And if you run it well, there's really no way to stop it unless you just have better individual players on your side of the ball as defenses. Part of the problem with that is that great players in the high school ranks are playing on the offensive side because more head coaches are offensive oriented. In the high school ranks, they're more offensive oriented head coaches in the college ranks. And you've got some great minds out there. Listen, Lane Kiffin is a great offensive mind. Steve Sarkisian is a great offensive mind. And what they do with the spread offense is equalize numbers. It is impossible for the defense to be right several times. So if the offense is executing at all, they're going to succeed. And then also when you legislate tackling out of practice, when you legislate, I think the targeting foul has minimized the quality of defense. Not that we need guys out there leading with their head, but defenders are more, I would say, anxious to throw themselves around like they have been in the past. All right, let's move on. What's coming up? Ian says, anyway, Oklahoma State makes the playoff if they lose a game but are still Big 12 champions. I doubt it, just on a hunch right now, Ian. And the reason is that we've seen, while it wasn't a playoff, we've seen Oklahoma State as a one loss in previous years, and they did not get the benefit of the doubt and get into the BCS National Championship. Remember, they lost that Friday night game with Brandon Weeden to Iowa State, didn't get into the BCS National Championship game. The problem with a team like Oklahoma State, and this is probably really to what I was talking about in the previous segment, a problem across college football, is the fact is the burden of proof is on the teams with the lesser talent. That's probably not right, but it's true. I think Oklahoma State probably has to go undefeated to get into the playoff this year. All right, we move on. This one comes in from Ian. Ian says, when the Big Ten starts playing, how do we change the rankings to accommodate them? Does an Ohio State that is 1-0 get the same credit as a 6-0 Alabama? Listen, I think you got to throw every norm out the window this year, obviously, right? Because it's been a pandemic. So what do? I think we evaluate teams based on how they play each and every week. What are we seeing? I think that the eye test plays way more a part this year in the rankings than anything else. Heck, I've got Ohio State at 0-0 ahead of Alabama at this point. So I think it's going to be based on every single individual voter, but I think that the really quality voters are just going to evaluate the teams as they see and not take as much stock in how many wins that they have during the course of the year. Okay, let's move on. What's this one? Brent says, crunchy or creamy peanut butter? Oh, this is easy. This is the easiest question that you can possibly get. Creamy. If you say crunchy, I don't know about you. I don't know if we can be friends. By the way, best PB compliment, jam, jelly, fluff, honey, none of it, please. Can I get a creamy peanut butter sandwich on wheat bread? That sounds delicious. I don't know about anybody else. I don't need crunchy peanut butter ripping my bread or my tortilla up. I want a nice, smooth, thick layer of creamy peanut butter on wheat bread, and I'm going to enjoy it with a nice tall glass of milk. You bet. It's easy for all of us to get caught up in great quarterback play, right? And we talk about quarterbacks all the time, and is it the most important position in football? Yes, it is. You generally don't have a lot of success as a team without a great quarterback. However, we have two really dynamic running backs in Alabama's Najee Harris, Clemson's Travis Etienne. Now, all due respect to some of the other great backs like Chuba Hubbard and everything, I wanted to break down these two really great backs on these two outstanding teams and more so really analyze how each team uses their star back. I'm going to start with Alabama because they are a real power-oriented running football team. They use these gap schemes and these power schemes so well for Najee Harris. He's kind of like the hammer, right? And he's big, he's physical. Here is a power play. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to block down on the left side, pull the right guard and the tight end. So that guard and tight end are going to come around, look for first color. They happen to just see one guy. They're going to double team him. The safety had rolled back from Ole Miss. It's a poor defense. They're misaligned. There's no support player, and it's a big play for Najee Harris. That power play and those gap schemes have been so good to Alabama. Here's another gap scheme. It's called pin and pull. These offensive line highlighted, they're covered. So all they do is pin their guys, and then the two offensive linemen that are uncovered, they're going to pull. All right, that's the rules. Very simple. It's a nice little gap scheme, pin and pull. Right now, Harris goes out there, reads the two blocks. Guess what? One lone safety ready to beat him. It's one-on-one, gives a little stiff arm, and gets to the pylon for a touchdown. Great gap scheme there. Then to close it out, they're up 8. They need to stay on the field. They get 3 tight ends and 2 backs in order to invite Ole Miss all the way up to the line of scrimmage. They block down with the offensive line, pull the guard, kick him out with the end man on the line of scrimmage, and then the fullback has a devastating block on the linebacker. And because Ole Miss is all stacked in there at the line, there's nobody left. Once that block takes place by the fullback, Harris is gone. So 3 different gap schemes, power plays, pin and pull. Alabama utilizing the power of Najee Harris to their advantage. Now let's contrast that with how Clemson uses Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, I think, is an NFL starter right now in a Clemson uniform. And watch this. Folks, I'm just going to give you a rip of all the screen passes that Clemson threw to Travis Etienne against Miami last week. There were 7 of them. So think about the juxtaposition there. You've got Harris running between the tackles, power, power, power. He's the hammer. The defense is the nail. Whereas Etienne, he's so skilled that they're trying to get him the ball in any way that they possibly can, in particular on the outside, so that he can utilize some of that speed and elusiveness that he has in space. But folks, he can do the power as well. There at the end of the game when they needed it, what is it? It is the exact same play that Alabama ran. Here they go, pulling the guard. He kicks out. The H-back leads up. He blocks the linebacker, and Etienne runs the power, and he's down the sideline for a touchdown. So while they are very different, and they're so skilled and they are used differently, there is some similarity between the way that Clemson and Alabama use Etienne and Harris. Just a fascinating breakdown when you watch the film and you watch these great players and how their schools use them. And I bet that they're going to have huge seasons because their offensive coordinators understand how to get them the football in the prime spots in order for them to be successful. Oh, I love this segment. A little Klatt back for us. Let's see what all of you have for me. Bring the snark, bring the, I guess, negativity. TJ says, all these people getting defensive about your top 10, maybe the SEC should try getting defensive. Oh, and how dare you rank teams that haven't played, because we don't do that every July and August. That's actually really nice of you. Are you defending me? I don't quite understand it. I don't know what to do with myself in a clap back segment when someone is actually defending me. TJ, thank you for your support and for your reasonable approach towards college football and what I put out there on social. It is rare, and I thank you for it. So TJ, well done, sir. Absolutely. All right, we move on. Dennis says, you won't admit you are way over-ranking Florida, so you have to now try to convince people A&M is a top 10 team. Dennis, you're falling trapped to exactly what I was talking about in the first segment. Listen, guy, A&M is a really good team. All right, they played Alabama fairly tough. Not that they should take huge amount of kudos just from that, but Florida is a really good team. Offensively, they're certainly a solid team. Did they struggle on the defensive side? Yes, there's no question about that. But why can't A&M be this good? This is a year in which a lot of us pointed to Jimbo Fisher having a team that was more prepared, more experienced, and ready to compete at the top levels of the SEC. They didn't do that against Alabama. They did it against Florida. Why do we not allow any team to develop and get better? Come on, Dennis, speaking of getting better, you get better. Please be better next time. And we move on. We move on from Dennis. Michael says, Joel Klatt, you said you wouldn't draft Justin Herbert in the first round. Change your mind on that. Yes, I have changed my mind on that. I said that in the pre-draft build-up last year. Justin Herbert has played outstanding ball in the NFL, and more power to him, and good for him. Here's the thing. When you give evaluations of guys before the draft, people automatically say, like, oh, you hate him, and this is – listen, I hope all these kids have success. These young men have worked their entire lives to go out there and have success at the next level and make this their job, their career. And Herbert's been able to do that, and I am so happy for him. So kudos to Justin Herbert. He's played amazing in the NFL, and I hope he continues to do so. Papa Joe says, how does Joel Klatt not have his own show on FS1? You're literally watching me on FS1. So maybe a hangover from the Padres losing. I see a little Tatis in the avatar. Oh, boy. You know what? It is what it is. Hey, folks, this weekend, Saturday, Gus and I, Big Noon Saturday, Kansas at West Virginia, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern on Fox. Be there.